Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know.
Hola, bom dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show, the podcast, and the Portugal Club, of course. I'm giving up on Substack. It just occurred to me, trying to cover every base on every social media platform is absolutely nightmarish. I think it's probably better to focus. It's taken me a long time to realize that. So if you want to hang out with me and the Gumpers and other wonderful people, come to the Portugal Club. Sign up at www.gmpvip.com, or go straight, if you want to type more in, if you want a longer job, theportugalclub.com. Right, it's Monday, the 16th of June, 2025. And starting us off this week, and responding actually to a Portugal Club inquiry, how do we go about saving and investing here in Portugal? Here to join me in his monthly residency, our man in the north, Vitor Costa, everybody. Hola, bon dia, alegria.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. And let's all thank our host, Carl Munson, for making this possible.
You're too kind. Thank you very much indeed. Great to see you, Vitor. How are you today?
Good. Had a rough last week, but now I'm back in action and more powerful than ever.
Oh, okay. So what didn't kill you made you stronger then? But you've been sick, have you?
Yeah. I really hate having cough, especially because a lot of what I do requires me talking. And so
Yes.
when I feel like I can't talk, I get really frustrated. But here we are.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you're feeling better, and it sounds like you're fully recovered. Yes, and bouncing back into business even stronger than you were before, which is hard to imagine because you seem to operate at quite a high capacity compared to other mere mortals. So good to have you here. And this question that came up from in the Gumper mailbag, really, saving and investing. Here in Portugal, not so much to do with stocks and shares and that kind of investment portfolios, but everyday saving. The funny thing is, when I started to ponder this, and it's long overdue, by the way, I'm not aware of ever hearing about a Portuguese financial advisor. I've never heard a Portuguese person say, "Oh, you must speak to my financial advisor." Mortgage brokers, yes. The bank, yes. But not necessarily an independent financial advisor. Is that not a thing here?
Well, now that you talk about it, I'm not sure if I know anybody that kind of fits that description. So possibly.
Wow, it's interesting. Oh, there's that cough. Yeah, and when we've talked to independent financial advisors, we've got people like Paul Correa. He's in Gibraltar. He helps Brits. You've got other companies, who help American folks look after their investments and create tax efficiency around that. There are a number of professionals who deal with what you're bringing and what you've already got. But when it comes to investing and saving within the country, it's a bit of a tumbleweed moment. So what's your view on that? Why would that be?
Yeah. As you know, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. In fact, this whole thing that I'm doing now started because I began studying and researching and learning financial literacy, right?
Yes.
And ever since I started reading those books about, 6-7 years ago, how long has it been? I'm the kind of guy that when I find something that I'm interested on, I obsess over it, right?
Yes.
I dig deep inside of it. I jump off the deep end and I keep digging and learning as much as I can and researching and really immersing myself in it. And financial literacy is one of those things that ever since then, I haven't stopped thinking about, researching, learning, and almost everything I do daily subconsciously has that on the back of my mind. And I always try and look and apply what I've learned with what I'm experiencing, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to financial literacy, investing, saving, how money works, currency, all of these things, obviously I'm not a specialist, a technical anything or like that, but I have noticed many patterns and many things that I've noticed, maybe compared to some other countries in Portugal, that I can give some of my opinions and then people can do with them what they want, right? So
before you do, let me ask you a question. So I take it you were picking up books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And we're very lucky in this age, aren't we, that there are loads of YouTube channels that you can subscribe to, and you might have started to subscribe to the is it the FIRE movement, retire early ideas. So we live in a good time for that.
Mhm.
Implicit in what you're saying is perhaps you didn't learn this at school. It's not necessarily a cultural thing. You came across it and you had to find out for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes,
Right.
I had to claw my way through. Also
Right.
because years before that, right, you would see, I don't know, YouTube videos and other things on social media, all also talking about, investing or wealth creation or stuff along those lines. But one thing that I always found is that most of it was kind of like weird out of context advice that maybe or maybe not could in some way be applicable, but it was always done in a way that was very confusing. You couldn't understand it, or most of the time they were just trying to sell you their course or
Yes.
anything like that, right?
Yes. Yes.
So what I've done is a mix of reading books, right? Doing research. There's a cool website called Investopedia that has everything about businesses investing. They even have a huge dictionary list about all the terms regarding the issue. And sometimes I would go, once a day, open up a random like definition, study the definition. Even the dictionary, funnily enough, can give you a lot of information because a lot of the words we use daily, we think we know what they mean, but we
Yes.
never really digged into what their literal meaning is. And when you do, you'll be surprised to find that many of the words that you've been using every day, you didn't quite know exactly what they meant, and
Yeah.
everything shifts and takes a different perspective.
And it's the same as with the when people talk about stock markets at the end of the news bulletin. Most people don't know why that is, do they? They've heard it all their lives, but they don't know what it means or why it might be a good or a bad thing.
Right.
The news that's being reported. So
Right.
yes,
Right, and in a way, we're starting to get a bit to the answer of the question. Like one thing that I found and I realized is that it definitely seems like that the way media in general and financial advisors and everything talk about investing and stocks and all of that sort of stuff, they make it sound super complicated and overwhelming to the point where if you want to invest, you need to think, you know what, this is way too much for me. I can't do it on my own. I need to hire someone and pay them a commission to do this for me, right? I'm
yes,
not saying that you can't have a financial manager by any means or that you're not worth the money. But at the same time, a lot of this information is kind of overcomplicated in the way that it is spoken. Investing can be quite simple if you understand some principles, but yeah, they make it super complicated, so you feel like you need to rely on them, right? Now,
yes. Well,
one
that's what professionals do, isn't it? I think generally speaking.
thing depends on what you mean by professional, right?
Well,
So
actually, what I mean is that the term professional is almost a definition. That is the definition of being a professional. And AI is in the process of really challenging that. I think
you know what?
professionalization is the business of helping normal people think they don't understand something, and then
Mhm.
creating a barrier, a language, a uniform, all of these things, so that they can be sold something. That's what professionals, to me, have been, and that's being challenged as we speak.
Remember when I said that I like using the dictionary? Let's take a look. So, dictionary definition of professional: one, relating to or belonging to a professional. Two, engaged in a specific activity as one's main paid occupation rather than a pastime. So, I guess I'm a professional real estate agent then.
Yes.
A person engaged or qualified in a profession, or two, a person engaged in a specific activity, especially a sport, as a main paid occupation rather than a pastime. So basically, a professional is someone who does something as their main source of income, um, instead of like a hobby, right?
Yeah.
Seems fair to me. But yeah, I mean, again, so I'm very much in favor of this idea that You become good at something and you understand something when you can explain complex topics in a very simple manner.
Yes. And it's not a hobby. You're actually practicing what you preach. You're making some money from it as well.
The what?
You're walking your talk, and you're making some money from doing it as well. That makes you stand out as a professional, and you can help others do the same.
Yes, yes, yes. So back to the topic then, like here in Portugal, one thing that I did notice, especially the more I started learning financial literacy, is that very few people actually even understand, these basic topics and financial literacy and all of these things. Even business owners, surprisingly enough, like I've met people who have dozens of employees, right? They have these big companies and they also don't really know a lot about investing, how these things works. They have a successful company somehow, but most of it is just through working hard work. They don't really think about it too much. Of course they need to know certain things and do them right. But for example, another thing I did is the accountant that we picked for our company at Portugal Door. I interviewed several accountants in several different areas. Right, we went to Barcelos, Ponte Lima, and everything to find one that we really felt like, not only. So here in Portugal, an accountant is a requirement by law for you to
Yes.
have a company, right?
Yep.
And so many Portuguese people see accountants as a necessary evil, right? They just have an accountant because they must have an accountant. And so they just go with whoever is the cheapest one. So we actually looked for the best accountant that we could find that could teach us. Sometimes if we ask her to go out for lunch or something that we have some doubts or questions about, our financial statements and things along those lines, she's happy to do so. She's
Good.
always constantly learning. So we do like that very much. And again, you don't see a lot of that here in Portugal.
That's
So
very
we're
good
very
advice.
fortunate there.
That's very good
Yeah.
advice. Interview your accountant and don't see them. I mean, on one level, yes, they might be a necessary evil, but because you have to have them. But find somebody who can actually help you grow. I think in the way that you're describing there, Vitor, as well.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And one of my mentors, right? He has over 40 years of real estate experience, and he's been helping me out a lot.
Great.
Like when I told him about this in the beginning, he said that the accountant should be the last thing you try to save money on.
Yes, absolutely. We're on our fifth personally, and we found somebody who we've been with for over a couple of years now, and
Mhm.
it does work. They are worth their weight in gold. They really are. So that's the accountancy part. Let's bring it towards saving then on a
Right.
mundane and everyday level. Now I've got a bit of background info here that might inform what you're sharing with us as well. Interestingly, this is what happens now, isn't it? When you Google something, you get an AI overview. Often
Mhm.
quite helpful, not just a list of links like we used to get back in the day. In Portugal, the average household saving rate has fluctuated with a recent increase driven by higher interest rates. They're not that much higher, as we'll find out. But anyway, they're
Mhm.
going up. While the rate is still considered low compared to the European average, and that might be because people don't earn very much here in Portugal and don't have a load of disposable income, it has shown some growth. Several banks offer savings accounts with varying rates and terms. Now, this is what people want to know about here. And there are options for regular savers as well. Here's a more detailed look. Portuguese household saving rate seen increases, rise to almost 10%. I think it's 10% of household income. That's what the saving rate is. In the fourth quarter of last year, the household saving rate increased to 13.4. Which is great if you're one of those people who are able to do that. Historically, the saving rate has ranged from 6 or 7% of disposable income, with some fluctuations due to economic conditions and restrictions on consumption. And obviously, COVID-19 had a problem with that. Going to the specifics, an example of the interest rate you might get in Portugal, and this is where people turn their noses up. A Millennium BCP offer a poupança ordenado with a whopping 1.5% rate for those receiving their salary at the bank. So for giving them your wages every month, they will give you 1.5%, and they've also got the poupança afora. I suspect other banks have these as well,
Yeah.
but that's not a big amount of money, is it? 1.5%. Are there better ways, Vitor, that you're aware of?
Right. So again, here in Portugal, the main the main money, not money making, but the main financial strategy Portuguese people use is cash under the mattress, often quite literally, right?
Yes, I've heard this. Or in the ground. Or when I found out a story about
Somewhere they find
damaged
some
roads.
hole, they put the
Yes,
cash in there, and
yes.
that's their strategy for the future. Now, me personally, knowing what I know today, right, and I'm going to give my opinion. It doesn't mean you have to do it or not, but I'm just going to expose what I've learned. Okay, so first of all, knowing what I know now about the currency, and then we can go down that rabbit hole. I literally do believe that saving money is actively losing money, right? Because our currencies right now, the dollar, the euro, the pound, they're backed by trust us, bro, by the government. So
Trust us, bro. Okay, yes.
there is nothing like holding their value. Like up until 1971, give or take, the dollar was backed by gold. That meant that if you had $1, you could go, I think, to the bank or whatever, and exchange it for an exact weight of gold. So it was as valuable as gold. But then when Nixon got rid of the gold standard, then it became a currency, and then it stopped being backed by gold, which meant that then they started printing, and now the dollar has lost like 93% or more of its worth, right? So that being said, 1.5% for savings accounts, that is definitely better than keeping it under the mattress, and it's most definitely even better than spending all of it, right?
Yes.
But if you take into account inflation and maybe 4 or 5%, whatever inflation per year, and you gain 1.5%, that's still under the inflation level. So you're
Yes.
still technically kind of losing money, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
I will say that if you don't understand how investing works, if you don't understand what you're trying to invest in, I would recommend that saving money might actually be better
Hmm.
than just giving money to someone to invest for you. But me personally, obviously, I'm biased, right? There's a reason why I'm in real estate also. I believe that real estate is probably one of the best investment vehicles. Again, don't just jump on real estate. Find someone who can explain it to you. Go over the numbers, figure everything out. I'd be happy to do so if anybody wants. But the thing about real estate is that you can have multiple exit strategies. What is an exit strategy? An exit strategy is, so you go into an investment, right? Or before you invest in something, and then you go over the scenarios of how can you make money from it, or if something bad happens, how can you maybe prevent from losing money, right? So let's say buying stocks. Okay, you buy stocks from a certain company, Apple, Tesla, EXP, whatever it is.
Nvidia, the one that you see in every YouTube video at the moment.
For
Yes.
example, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say that you buy, I don't know, 100 stocks for $10, right? So you invested $1,000 of a stock. Your exit strategy is basically to sell, unless it has dividends, I guess, but let's assume it doesn't, to keep things simple. So what happens is, you can set, okay, if it reaches $15 or $20, I may sell. And then you can take that profit, right? But then let's say that the value keeps going down, like $8, $7, $6. At that point, either you keep holding and hope that the value goes up, and then you can sell for an higher amount later into the future, right? Or you can decide that, you know what, I'm going to sell it, try and cut my losses, lose half my money, and then liquidate like that, right? So that's kind of what you have. On real estate, right? So if you're smart about it, you will consider several options. Most people see real estate as you see a property, you think it looks nice, you buy it, and then you try to sell it for a higher price or whatever, and it doesn't always work. So what I recommend is you see an area where you'd like to invest. You figure out what the average price, total price, I'm not talking about square meters, Pricing psychology is another thing we can get into. But let's say you determine the average price. Let's say it's about 250,000, right? And then you find a property where you can buy, renovate, or something like that for a lower amount. Let's say 30% lower, perhaps, than the market price of that property. Okay, and so you have your margin of profit. You find something like that where, let's say you're going to need maybe 100,000 for renovations. So you know that if you're going to spend 100,000 in renovations, because that's roughly the price per square meter for a property that size, then you'll know, okay, if I want to invest a total of like 200,000, so I can have a 50,000 euro margin, then you know that you would have to buy a property up to about 100,000. And so you establish how much you can buy a property for, right? Because people usually do it the other way around. The way people usually invest in real estate, right, is they look for properties that they think they like, they see the price, and then they try to rationalize, oh, if I can repair it for under this price, right? So maybe I can save a little bit, or I can find a guy who does it for cheaper and blah, blah, blah. Then I can sell it for a little bit extra. But that's just one exit strategy, right? So what happens if for some reason the market crashes or if it goes down? Well, how much could you rent that property for, right? Like plan B, instead of selling, how much could you rent it for? Or maybe it's a college city, and maybe you could rent out rooms as well. Maybe you could put some high-speed internet, some other amenities, so you could attract students, maybe put the price a bit lower. And then you do the math on those different outcomes so that if things don't go exactly as you had hoped for plan A, you'll have a few other ways where you can still profit from your investment. And the other thing I like about real estate is that unlike your currency, real estate usually tends to appreciate. It tends to go up in value. And more technically, I've been thinking about this for a few years now, right? I don't really think the problem is that homes are getting more expensive per se. More specifically, I believe it's due to the euro being worth less. Because, and people love blaming expats and all of that, where it's like only about 14% of purchases on real estate here in Portugal were from foreigners. But then what would explain that a certain kind of bread that we had here in Ponte Lima was like 19 cents about 6 years ago, and today it's 34 cents.
Yes.
Right? So people will say, oh, but it's just, I don't know, 15-cent increase. Right, but that's still almost double the price.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But on real estate, something going from 190,000 to 340,000 sounds like a huge, but the percent increase is the same.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Okay, and you said you'd be prepared to walk people through this if they want to get a sense of how to invest in real estate in Portugal. And you're favouring that over and above the interest rate offered by banks. As Vitor said, these are his opinions as well. Do your due diligence, have a chat with Vitor, and consider it as one of the options you might have. Anything else you want to add on this, Vitor? Others, savings culture consciousness here in Portugal. It seems to be quite a risk averse culture compared to some cultures that people are coming from.
Yes. So what I would like to add to that is that I'm just talking a bit more broadly and in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I realized also is that investing and all of these strategies have to do with your needs and your current situation, right? So, when I was growing up, everybody talked investing about stocks and stuff like that, or doing this or doing that, and everybody would be telling you what to do. But what I find to be the truth now is that in reality, each stage of your life or what you're going through will determine what makes more sense for you, right? How risk averse are you? Like, what kind of strategy do you need? For example, me being starting as an entrepreneur and everything, I had the shiny object syndrome, and I tried a little bit of everything, right? But now there's one thing that I realize, which is, so there are strategies to make money, there are strategies to conserve money, and there are strategies to lose money, right?
Yes.
Roughly speaking.
Yeah.
So on my case, right, we're still relatively young, starting a career, all of these things. So my strategies right now, because our resources are still relatively limited, is more focused towards figuring out how to make money, how to earn more money.
Yes.
So right now, if I were to only rely on investing with what I have, I wouldn't be making that much. So now I'm focusing most of my efforts into creating money, right? Selling services, selling products, selling real estate, making other things that can get me paid bigger amounts of money up front, so that then when I get to a point where I figured out how to make a lot of it, then I will start investing so that that money can make more money. And then, if I make even bigger amounts, right, then the strategies would yet again change.
Invest your
Again,
surplus at that point. Yeah, I get it. Absolutely get it. And of
Yeah.
course, we're open to this is a community.
Yes.
This is a communication where it's an interchange of ideas. So if you've got something to add to this, jump over to the Portugal Club and let's have a conversation about it. I mean, it would be good to know about investors clubs. We haven't even talked about crypto and some of the more unusual breeds of investment opportunity. So I think we should maybe continue this conversation next time. Have you any more general news about the real estate situation up in the north of Portugal? What's your snapshot for the moment?
Well, again, things are still, I don't see prices coming down too much in the near future. Again, supply demand is the most powerful force in the universe.
Yes.
But again, it's a matter of, I think people should think less in terms of what am I supposed to do, right? And more along the lines of, okay, where I am, where am I right now? Where do I want to be with my life? And what would get me closer to the life that I do want? And
Very
yes, I'm happy to help people go over this, go over the math, go over the numbers. And once again, this is very important. Don't invest in anything that you don't understand cleanly, simply, right? There can be trust involved, I guess. I mean, if somebody told me, hey, Vitor, I want to invest in real estate, I don't care to know anything about it, I want you to help me out. Of course, I would do my best to help, but I always recommend that people understand, and I would do my best to educate the client as well, so that they at least know what they'd be getting themselves into, the pros and cons, the risks. And then I think people, once they know what they can get to deal with, then they should make a decision.
Very good. And you can help people discover beautiful properties in the north of Portugal as well, if they're looking for a home as well as an investment.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Again, investing on real estate in specific has a lot more to do with how you buy more than how you sell or how much you rent or whatever.
Very good. Thank you for chatting with us today. Go to portugaldoor.com to find out more about what Vitor offers. And you'll see his wife, Maria, there as well, who you should speak to as well. They are the dynamic duo up in the north of Portugal. So lots of love to you both and the family there, Vitor. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. And if you want to chat with Vitor, you can message him directly at the Portugal Club, gmpvip.com. Big round of applause. Have a great week, boss. Semana.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts.